certainly the Law of One has a lot to share about the different energy centers. And I hadn't known a lot about the chakras before being exposed to it in the Law of One. I mean, I knew that there was some such thing as chakras, and I kind of knew that they were like the rainbow colors. But apart from their different energy stuff, the vibrational frequencies within each center, I didn't know that. And so I have a bias, and that is I'm very formed in the raw metaphysics, but I also trust it over and against other sources that talk about the chakras. So the way I'm just naming my bias first before I talk about them, and I know you know this already, but I want to put it out there. And that is, I will hold up the raw material as a light, and then I bring in other sources that might try to talk about the same kind of things, and I try to see if that light matches the wholeness. And it can always contribute to nuances of understanding, but I haven't found anything that is matching it in the same way that the Law of One does. Yeah. The way I understand it is that everywhere, always, eternally in the present moment is what's called intelligent energy. And it is Ka, Ka, I think in the Egyptian, it might be Chi, but it is intelligent energy, but it's not focused. It's kind of like an artist going into an art store, and there's massive amounts of clay that you can buy, but it's unformed clay, and then you take it home and you can start to form it. Everywhere, always is this unregimented, unorganized chi, and that when there's a human person there, then that human person acts like if I can, a black hole or vortex that starts to bring in and organize the chi. And it comes through certain levels or centers of frequency that are responsible for bandwidths of consciousness. So, for example, the way I'm looking at it is, you could think of it as everything is this open chi, this unregimented chi. And when it starts its funneling process through a person, just as if you were to fill a bathtub full of water and then you pull the plug and you watch the whirlpool start, the very surface of the water would be the red ray. But that doesn't mean that the red ray energy isn't located in all the other energy centers. In fact, it becomes the very structure of the other centers that build upon it. And so you might even see that there's really only one spectrum, and that is red ray to violet. And the spectrum is very kind of broadband, slow moving energy, like you might see at the very beginning of a whirlpool. And then the indigo would be extremely focused, narrow, lots of stuff is happening. And really the violet ray is the red ray complexified at least 7 times, in and of itself, and forms a new crystallization. So there's only one spectrum. But here's the thing, is that inside of that spectrum, there are qualitative differences between each of the energy centers. So that one is similar to you and I as human beings are on the spectrum of life. Let's say we're on the spectrum of life with other hominids like an ape. But there's a qualitative difference between an ape and you and I. So though we're both on the same, an ape and you and I, we're on the same spectrum of hominid, say, there's a qualitative difference and a capacity to receive energy and do something with it with some kind of agency. That's at a quantum level, qualitative level, higher, larger than what an ape can do. And so that's what the energy centers are. The first one is the red ray. And the red ray, the way I like to think of it is the red ray is the one. The yellow ray is the many. And the negotiation of the one and the many is the orange. Why? Because red and yellow make up orange. And so Ra would say that the lower chakra triad kind of works as one unity made up of the diversity of these three energy centers. And it's really the negotiation of you as an individual, as Danny, or as me as Doug. How do I make sense that I'm one individual embedded inside of, coming from, emerging from, and trying to negotiate with the many? And that energy center of negotiation between the one and the many is my individual identity, which is the orange ray. So you can almost think of the red and yellow as more fixed, and the orange is coming from that. It's almost a child of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way I like to look at it is not sequential, where you have the red, the orange, the red, the orange, and the yellow here, but rather I'd like to look at it as a triangle point down. So both edges that are up, the edge of the triangle, the long side, you can put red and yellow. So we have the one and the many, and then orange is right down at the point in the bottom. And this is the individual self, and that its job is to grow and grow and grow with the dynamic tension of the one and many, one and many, one and many, to grow so that it can actually learn to penetrate the line into green. Green would be a center that is right above the long edge. Can you picture that in your head? Yeah. And the green center, the only way that the orange can get through into the green, to pass through that membrane, is through surrender.
Okay.
Is through, in Christianity, we call it kenosis. A full surrender and a letting go of the needs of the false self, power, prestige, possessions, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so really here we can see the Christian mythos of death and resurrection as being paramount. It also gives us a handle on when Jesus says, be in the world and not of the world. Mm-hmm. Being in the world would be to participate in only the affirming systems that's within the lower chakra triad. So, for example, that bellicosity that you and I have talked about before, that bellicosity is a thought form that grows inside of that triangle on a macro level, but it's reaffirmed because, take capitalism, for example. If you succeed in capitalism really well and don't care about other people, and it's just, the capacity for me to build my own kingdom, well, I look like I'm a winner, at the end. But I don't realize that, and I might even say God is blessing me, and, I must be close to God because look at all this stuff that I have. What I don't realize is that can actually entrap me more into this affirmation of the lower chakra triads while thinking that I am more ascended than I am. Same thing about religion. I can be the best Catholic, go to mass, go to confession all the time, take Eucharist, know the dogma and doctrine, pray to the saints. And I can remain an exclusivist. If you're not following the church's teaching, then you need to confess that. I can be moralistic. I can be judgmental. And I think that I'm doing right because I'm following the tenets of the church, but I don't realize that I'm, again, entrapping myself all the more inside of this triangle. Yeah. Because what is necessary on both the human individuated level, like you and I, or in the macro level, is to bump up against this membrane that is created by the one and the many, to bump up against that, and then to finally learn to die to self, or that might mean letting go of all my former belief systems, or letting go of who I think I am. I mean, you've done this a million times, at least probably 6 times, major times in your life. Me too, you know?
Yeah.
And then you rise inside of the heart. And what Ross says is that the heart is actually more of, it's not a place where you give out energy. The heart is a receiving center. In other words, think of the heart as a vacuum that is positioned where it's trying to suck up the energy that's coming through the root, all the lower chakras. It's trying to come up against it. I mean, it's it's sucking up, and the light wants to go inside the heart. Right? This yearning, like St. Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. I think that he was saying in third density speech, he was trying to say what I'm trying to say metaphysically, and that is the heart center is like, it's a kind of vortex again, or a black hole that's where all the light is trying to go into. And when you get inside the heart, it's a portal to the higher centers. The heart is a receiving center where what we're receiving is consciousness of not only my own self-awareness, parts of me that are hidden, parts of me that through forgiveness I can now unleash and unblock, acceptance, forgiveness, all that.
Yeah.
I can do it for my partner. I can do it for my kids. I can do it for other people. And you start to see people from what I think you're really good at, Danny, is seeing people from a 360 point of view, a holistic, like how did you get there kind of thing. Like even if I disagree with someone, I from the heart center, I don't have to see them as less than. With a dignity, I can maybe perhaps get some downloads in a sense, tapping into their energy and get a sense of, okay, you were abused by your mom and dad and da-da-da-da. And there was a sense of how you got here so that a person's worldview might be in contrast to my own, but I understand how it arrived. So let me stop there and ask you, how does this resonate so far?
Really well. Yeah. Yeah. And along with the Christian language, I'm hearing a lot of the, what I call the coursework, especially like Course of Love, this movement into the age of the heart, this, and what it takes to get there. And a lot of, what I liked about your article that involved Laura Eisenhower was how Rob was saying how much people are in this lower triad, but think they're actually operating from the higher triad. And I think that's what throws me off, not to seem like I'm one who doesn't, but yet when I go to my different spiritual book groups and things, I feel like they're jumping ahead of you, but maybe hearing the vision of the upper higher triad and just going there in some form of what I call heaviness. We call it, I guess, a spiritual bypass in a way, but that lower triad work has just not really gone on. And so that, to me, what emerges in the grain out of the one, the many, which is, Jesus used that language a lot in Course of Love, because we were all in oneness, but it was kind of an unconscious unity that had to go into differentiation.
Correct.
And so I could see where orange in itself would be gathering your identity, what we might call our true identity. That is more of an upper triad in terms of we are all divine beings, children of God, kind of moving into that Christ consciousness, which is of the higher triad, but it's done through the relationship down there. And I could see where it would emerge into the heart. I mean, that, if I'm understanding it right, that, and the surrender, the letting go, and along with the surrender, that I think that's possible when the integration takes place of what those blockages you spoke of that seem to be stored in those vibrational levels of the lower triad.
Yes. And once we get into the heart, it doesn't mean that the lower triad is done. In fact, as you know, every catalyst, which means every moment that assaults our senses, every catalyst contains the fullness of all of the lessons that we've ever been through and done well, along with our imbalances of all of our lifetimes. It's presented in the present moment.
I think that's what a newer revelation to me was I knew everyone had said you're never complete, but I kept thinking this process of triggers and back into there and experience and all these things. I think they resolve out, but yet if that energy is always there, and also the awareness that it's not like now you operate at green or blue, but that there's still always a flow. And I guess that's why I like the idea of the red being kind of a groundedness now, that everything's still flowing, like you said, through that full vortex or whatever. And I think I began to experience that in a more experiential way. And I was missing that until the last few months.
Let me state this one statement, and then I'm going to ask you, how can you feel a difference if you were missing that and now you're exploring that? I'm interested in your own perception there, but I'd like to say that, if someone is a Blu-ray entity, when Rod talks about someone who has activated the green and enjoying blue, it doesn't mean that their seat of consciousness, or let's say the fifth chakra, the Blu-ray, is someone who is operating from basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So it's the whole system. It's just that it's operating at the nuance and the expansiveness of the Blu-ray, which is honest communication, truth, all of this stuff. Yeah. Wisdom. Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, it feels like that. Well, it's a groundedness that is not just from pure that Blu-ray, that whatever we want to call that, truth or the truth and love or other names for those levels.
Yeah,
is in such a groundedness that to me it comes because I'm so aware of what's flowing through me. As those catalysts still come in, I have a moment where, and I feel that down in my red ray or just, and then I'll realize, there's an experience of for some reason I think I'm threatened, or I've kind of lost my sense of identity here, or I feel like it's going to be taken away, or I need to defend it.
Well said. Well said.
All those things, and so that's flowing and breathed through in the moment that I'm having in the now with a person or something that's bringing the catalyst in. So
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, red ray at the level of red ray is my embodiment going to survive this?
Yeah.
Yeah, red ray at the level of the blue is my capacity to speak truth, my truth, not just like this is what I believe, but rather my inner integrity. Yeah. All of that is that going to survive this moment? So it is always survival, but it's survival at the level of the energy center.
Yeah. Yeah. Holding it. Yeah.
Yes. Good. Upholding it. Can the crystallization uphold and be and gird the powerful pressure of the catalyst that is now upon me?
Yeah. Yeah, in common language now, we'll talk about being containers for things and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of holding all that in that moment.
Good.
The person you're talking to you may be holding it for them, at the same time.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's really, I really love too the idea you're talking about. The green is more this movement of the lower triad, and I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about how a higher triad.
Yeah, let's do that right now. Let's move right there. Yeah.
Sure.
So Ross says that so we have the green ray. True green is a vacuum that's pulling up the energy center. It's wanting to find its consummation in the green ray center, which is where we learn love and understanding. And I like to think of it as standing under. We're standing under the situation and seeing the roots of how people get to where they're at, including ourselves. Yeah. But access to the blue ray, Ross says, is only a matter of will. In other words, it's not that hard to get, but you do have to desire to embody the love and understanding that you've come to gnosis, to know at a lived experiential reality. And that is called the law of responsibility. So what I mean by the law of responsibility, it's connected to karma. Basically, it's karma in the nuance of the veiled third density condition. And the law of responsibility, Ross says, is to the degree that you and I understand and have felt the freedom of the green ray, the love and understanding. We have breakthroughs into that, If we don't embody some action of loving service that is an expression of our now gnosis, if we don't embody that, then we will lose the very enjoyment of that green ray. Because if you don't do, like, everything is two-sided. So like a coin, you can't have a coin without having both sides on the coin, but it's still one coin. So in some ways, the blue and green are connected as intrinsically as the coin is, where one side of the coin, the green, is the reception. It's the vortex that calls it in. But what's on the other side of the vortex? Well, it's the water that then exits shot out, isn't it? So this is the place where it can express outwardly. It's not just a reception. It's an expression. That's why it's called the Center for Honest Communication. But it's not necessarily how we might define honesty as just tell the truth. Because, if I'm operating from a very blocked lower chakra triad and I don't know it, then I might tell you, well, my honest and highest truth tells me that the sky is pink. And if you say it's blue, well, that's coming from the cabal. They want you to think that. You know what I mean? That's not what I mean by honest communication. What I mean by honest communication, I think the way that Ross talking about it, is this sense that to the fullness that I can understand my own wholeness and brokenness at the same time. No judgment about any of it. It's just that I am all the good things because of the struggles that I've had to go through and still go through too. And I've accepted, forgiven, hold it all in gratitude. That capacity to then get out of myself and then plant seeds in the world through relationships, through deliberate acts of loving kindness, not just, through doing presentations or, my vocation as a counselor, but through my friends and my family, especially my immediate family, when they get on my damn nerves. You know what I'm talking about. But to the degree that you and I can maintain our integrity, and then when we know that we're not, to immediately do what is necessary to get back on inside of the Blu-ray, which is to forgive when we need to forgive others, when ask for forgiveness, when we need to be asked for forgiveness. It's the Our Father, my God. It's the Our Father. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against. I mean, it really is the perfect prayer. Yeah. So the Blu-ray is honest, embodied communication. You as a third density human, me as a third density human right here embodying whatever level of metaphysical joy and love and all of that stuff, if we don't put it to good use, then we lose what little we have. And do you know what parable is in the Bible that explains exactly this?
Well, I don't know. Is it where they received the money and went out and what they did with it? And
notice what happens. The parable of the 10 talents.
Yeah.
So we have it where one person got 10 talents, one person got 5 talents, and one person got 1 talent. And then the master goes away, and when he comes back, the person with 10 invested those 10, worked really hard, and earned 10 more. So we see like a really good, what do you call that?
Return?
Yeah, return. God, see, there you go. The person who had 5 did the same thing, but the 5 did what was the 5's to do. The 10 did what was the 10's to do, even though it was maybe quantitatively different.
Yeah.
Qualitatively, whatever you're given, you are to put that out into the world.
Yeah.
The one who had 1 didn't. The one hid that. And so that would be where you and I would receive some kind of level new gnosis and enjoy, but then don't incarnate it right away in some act of love and service. When we don't do that, that would be the equivalent of hiding it, burying it out of fear, or maybe I'm scared or insecure, or that would require me to change, I'm worried about messing up my image. And notice when the master comes back in the parable, the person that had 1, even that was taken from him and given to the person who has 10, not to the one who has 5. And then the person who now has 0 is sent off wailing and gnashing of teeth. And that would be the equivalent of where if we don't incarnate our level of gnosis of love and blessedness to give that to others, then we end up creating a closed system of that lower chakra triad where it is a constant fight for, oh my God, I just want to get back to the heart, or I just want to get back to that. But then it becomes a possession. So it's like when you go to a retreat and you have a great time and you say, oh, I'm never going to thank God for this feeling. This is great. I'll never. And then you try to grasp on to that feeling. And then when you feel like you're not feeling it anymore after a week, it's like, well, maybe I'm not doing it right. And then you hate on yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I was already feeling this when we were talking about the lower triad, because it was almost like if it is a vortex and I'm down in this and I'm making that process, if I don't come out, it's almost like putting outriggers out of my boat through action, through giving. I don't stabilize there. I'm like sucked back in. And I was feeling the need that you were talking about is I'm finding more ways to move out. And I mean, I've noticed in Adi's relationship, when we're in a good place, I'm like, I never want to go back there, but if I don't find ways, then I'm sucked back in. I'm like, oh, it's like 2 different realities. How did I get here again? And how do I get out? And it usually starts with will. I'm just going to get up and do something in the kindest way I know how. And it's not denial, it's, I mean, I noticed that when I walked in this office here and I looked at all this paperwork and I thought, I wouldn't even do this at my house right now. I need to go through all this tons of stuff. Like I'm somehow limited. But when you start putting out, you are limitless. I can do it here. I'm not going to use me up. You feel like it's going to, but that's kind of that lower triad sense of scarcity that goes with it or something.
You are making some great connections. And so the 5th chakra, the blue chakra, Ra says, is the first chakra of co-creativity. It's the first spiritual chakra of the spirit, because there you are, if you will, you've always been God, trying to experience God's self as Danny, but a 5th ray, a blue ray entity, human, is a consciously aware co-creator who is both God and inside of God, stewarding wholeness, acts true embodiment of wholeness into the ethos of separation, because the third density is on purpose by design, a sacred and glorious design, one in which it feels like everything is separate, because that's the byproduct of the veil, forgetting. But
it's the experience of the many.
Of course, but the many that we can't see the rootedness that are all one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the co-creator level, the Blu-ray, is someone who is actively living the unity of all things and giving that gift of gnosis to others and inviting them into that.
Gosh, it's almost as if green is kind of this neutral that either gets sucked back down or you come out of it into the blue and it still stays in the middle. But I was trying at the green ray level to put those out. And I remember you said something the other day, a session or two ago, about the how the green gets drawn back in. And you were saying, yeah, the blue, you're starting to get to blue. You're starting to be able to hold it because you're in the blue. And I saw the blue as a whole nother level that I was never going to arrive at, in this lifetime,
No, you're doing the blue every time that you incarnate your gnosis of love. But the green ray is the foundation of the new being. So this is where Christians would say born again or born from above. And then secondly, the green ray is, you can call it, in a sense, you can call it the Son in terms of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, because Jesus says no one gets to the Father, which is this co-creatorship, this sense of infinite, intelligent infinity, which is the purview of the upper chakras. No one gets to the Father except through going through the heart chakra, the Son. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. Where would you put resurrection in there? Would you?
Oh, yeah. Resurrection is the death of the false self, the needs of the false self, and that is you resurrected into the heart. So
resurrection and a green ray. Yeah.
Resurrection is the death of the identification of the lower chakra triad, and it is the rising of an inclusion of the lower chakra triad, but now brought into a level of an understanding about how it all kind of works.
Yeah, and of course, in love terms, it would be like the sustainability of Christ consciousness, so to speak. I think.
Good.
And now you start getting ideas introduced of ascension, which everyone's jumping into that, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't think we, But anyway.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to build on, and it could be to where when we do our podcast, let's look it up. But when we do our podcast, I can include this part of it maybe as a primer for people to listen to if they want.
And the overview I was looking for, Doug, is within this groups I'm in, how can the raw material offer that light on it that I think can add a huge big picture? And then I didn't know if there's any benefit to those that are in the law of one. Sometimes I think Course of Love stuff is kind of a practical ground roots level of, how to make that movement within it, So, but mostly I feel like, how can this help those that I'm around?
Yeah.
And that's not that I want to reach out and look, here, this is going to help you. But to me, it's like, for me to put it together, it's good for me with larger context. It's very helpful.
Was it helpful what we talked about today in terms of giving a bit of a light? We haven't talked about the indigo or the, all that.
We haven't done the upper triad. No, this is incredibly helpful and just happens to be right where I'm moving right now. So it helps. And it's very timely.
All we can do is say amen. Let's look at our schedule, my brother.
Okay.
Let's first off, let's look at when we want to connect in terms of doing the podcast. And I would have time this Friday, but I don't know what that looks like for you. And I know that you guys are very dependent, or you can't really plan your time too much because, yeah.
Well, I'm relatively free within the context of being here. I imagine there'll still be Audie's brother here, Yeah, I think I'm pretty open. Yeah.
Okay. you're on East Coast time.
Yes.
So if we were to do 9 a.m. my time, that's 10 a.m. your time, that would give us an hour and a half to really do what we need to do with that. Is that okay?
Yeah. 10 a.m. Yes.
Friday,
the 17th.
yes, sir.
Perfect.
And if it doesn't work out, if we need to change it, you and I are flexible. So,
Okay, good.
do you want to set up something the next time we connect in this forum? Do you want to do that then? Okay, let's do that now then. When would you like to connect you and me in this forum?
How about would Wednesday the 22nd be an option?
Sure would.
I'm also open on the 21st too. So
Okay.
either of those days.
The 21st is better for me. I'm pretty full on the 22nd. So if we could do the 21st, we could do the same time now, 11.
Yeah, that works good.
My time. Yeah.
Perfect.
And just as we can differentiate a few things, like I would be interested when you and I meet next week, not the podcast, but I would love to, maybe you and I can talk more on a personal level about how you are embodying these things that we talk about, just to make sure that the law of responsibility is kicking and moving and we're doing it.
Yeah. No, I need that because I think as a 4, I get too easily drawn back in and I need to be extending out, as much as I can. So.
That sounded like a Blu-ray statement.
Oh, good.
Yeah. If you can come tonight, you're welcome. We're going to be doing the prayers, catalysts, and things like that. So you're always a good presence. But I love you, Danny. I'll look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Take care, Doug.
All right. Bye.